Today we're with Daniel Fussell, who's running for County Commission District 2. How are you today?
Doing well himself.
Good. You ready to get started?
Yes, sir.
All right. So what made you want to run for County Commission?
Well, through a lot of prayer and situations coming down the pipe, with the property tax legislation and just a lot of change that's bound to happen. I prayed about it and kind of paid attention to what was coming out with the other two candidates and just, I guess we all have different ideas. And I felt like it was necessary to just step forward to serve the community that shaped who I am.
All right. And what makes you qualified to be a county commissioner?
Qualification. Everybody has gifts and talents. And I personally have been in the business world my whole life. And I feel like a lot of government entities lack that. I think that that's lacking to a degree in our current commission. And I feel like the ability to communicate relationships that I have, that are in and around Tallahassee, that could be beneficial to our community as far as grants and different things are concerned, could start some serious conversations. I think definitely, opens the door for my, I guess you would say, qualification. And just having a heart for the people, and willing to get up every day and go to work on their behalf. It's not a job, or it is a job. This isn't clickbait for me. This is real and impacts the lives of my children and the countless children his age and otherwise. So I'm committed. If I'm elected by the people, I'm committed to getting up every day and going to work on their behalf. I've always said, if you're going to draw a salary, if you're going to draw a wage from somebody, you need to be willing to put forth the work to earn it. And that's where my heart's at, is for the people of this community.
What's your stance on the proposed property tax reform?
I think that it is, there's a lot of elements to it. It's not just a one and done. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I think that the way that it was passed is detrimental to, fiscally constrained counties like our own. I definitely don't see it as a benefit. Do I think that property tax had run amok? Yes, I do. I don't think that it's fair that myself or any other landowner, homeowner, have to pay tax on an unrealized gain. I think that's completely and totally unfair. And there was a lack of accountability there. I was more in favor of the way that DeSantis originally drew it up, with the safety nets and the guardrails in place for fiscally constrained counties. The way that it was passed removed those safety nets, removed the trust fund, and all the things that were going to enable us a time frame to find our financial footing. All of that's been removed. It's non-existent anymore. So it's to the detriment of small communities like ours. And that's why it's incredibly important that we have a commission, that is willing to get up every morning. And it's not hard questions. I've heard people say, well, I'm going to ask the hard questions and I'm going to do this. They're not hard questions. They're just necessary. It's just necessary questions. It's not personal, it's business, and we're conducting business on behalf of the people of this county. And we need to treat it that way. We need to treat it like our own savings account, our own checking account, and it's not to a degree. So, I think that's something that I bring forward, that, I don't view it as controversy. I don't view it as, anything personal. It's just business, and it's the future of my son and my other children, as well as everybody else's children. And I want to do that appropriately.
So how would you handle the likely decrease in revenue that would occur if that reform was passed?
Well, first, until you really get into something, so in my professional life, I built timber companies and rebuilt timber companies. Timber companies, they operate on really small margins. High risk, high reward, right? So I learned through my experience and, the ebbs and flows of learning. and being taught by some incredibly wise men that you really don't know until you get in it. You have to step off in it. And until you get there to where you can see things for what they are, you can look at all the budgets, you can look at where redundant costs are, where you can look at, double services, doing things twice, doing things inefficiently. You can actually identify those areas. I can't tell you specifically, I'll save money on motor graders, but identifying redundant costs, I would make a motion to have a performance audit done. You can have the financial audit done, and that shows that the money's been spent legally, but it doesn't show the effectiveness of it. It doesn't show how efficient it was spent and what the benefit of it was. That's where a performance audit comes in. And, does it cost a little bit of money to do so by a third party? It does, but it's a necessary expense if you really want to know, where your inefficiencies are financially and where you are efficient, and be able to identify them and deal with them accordingly. You can't just go into something, ignorant per se, and say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. We have to find out where those are. I know they exist. I've had several things brought to my attention by some concerned citizens that I was unaware of that are incredibly concerning to me. But until you can put it in black and white, it's opinion. So identifying those areas and streamlining them and eliminating the redundancy and the inefficiency. That's number one. As far as our public safety is concerned, people have had conversations in Tallahassee about the possibility of putting first responders and deputies and all that on the state health insurance. I mean, just at the sheriff's department, that's like $700,000 a year. That's a large amount of money that, if lobbied appropriately and the right doors were knocked on and they opened and they were stepped in, and you could have the right conversations with the right people, that's money that could ultimately go back into those budgets. So, that's a big deal. Is it a reach? Some people say it is. It just depends on how committed you are to going to work and making it happen.
So what are your thoughts on AI data centers?
I think that AI data centers, that are a constant draw on our natural resources are awful. We already have a groundwater issue. We don't need anything depleting our natural resources further. However bad data centers are, that's a battle we can fight right now. That's with moratoriums and pushing back and holding local government accountable, and we should. However, if the state decides, like they did with solar fields, that, hey, this is what's going to happen, they force it down your throat. So I think that, whenever you look beneath the surface, there's always smoke and mirrors, right? There's always, look here while I do this over here. And I think that data centers are totally in that realm of operation right now. So more importantly, or not more importantly, I would say, but, yes, we need to push back on data centers right now. We need to keep them at bay, but we also need to be proactive and intentional about future land use maps, putting guardrails in place, zoning and all that kind of stuff, so that if the day comes that the state does say, hey, you're doing this, we can steer where they go. And they don't just put them in our backyard. You know what I'm saying? There's ways that we can push back now to keep them away, but use that time that we have so that we can protect ourselves in the future. If Tallahassee, and they've done it before, solar fields, prime example, come in and say, hey, this is what's happening, and preempt anything that we've already done. That's the battle or the war that we really need to be waging, is a real comprehensive plan, future land use maps. We have a good representative right now that is from a rural community for the first time, and I don't even know how many years. So we have an ear, a sounding board in Tallahassee, and somebody that I believe will go to bat for us, but you have to be intentional and thought out and realistic in how you can do this thing legally, because we can all throw a fit and, throw a sucker in the dirt and raise Cain, but at the end of the day, how effective is that? If we do that with intention and we do that effectively, now we've done something for Gilchrist County. And that's what I'm about. I want to do something that's effective and that actually works, and prevents the, we got a year right now. They put the 1 year moratorium in place. I think it was smart, educate yourself, find out what's going on, keep everything at bay, give yourself some breathing room. But at the end of the day, it's the 5 and 10 year mark that we need to be looking at. And we can so easily get caught up in inflamed rhetoric that we lose sight of the 5 and 10 year mark. And then next thing we know, they put it where they want it. And that personally is not okay with me. And I don't think that's beneficial to this county.
What are the biggest issues you think the county commission needs to address?
I think we need to get them to go to work. Economic growth, having a real economic development plan. I talk to a lot of people, and there's one common thread. Because everybody that are parents, they want to give their kid, better than they had, and that's our calling. I have 3 children that I love immensely, and I want nothing more than to give them better than I had. And everybody has the same common thread. My child has to leave, in order to be able to, reach their goals and their dreams. They can't afford to commute from Trenton to Gainesville. Gas at $3 and whatever a gallon. It's just not conducive, right? So, economic development isn't going to save the day right now. But, if we broke ground tomorrow on a real industry, and I'm talking about something that's cohesive. I'm not talking about another, fast food restaurant or gas station or any. I'm talking about a real industry where people, just like Newberry, they just broke ground on a agriculture industry over there. Where I think the median salary is $60,000 a year. Think about what that would do for the young people of this community. And agriculture, we pride ourselves on agriculture. So those type of industries and those conversations that, again, the future land use maps, you can, with your zoning and different things, you can attract them here and also steer where they go, where it's all cohesive with our way of life. Instead of otherwise, when these children have to leave, to go, and I have a cousin that has a bachelor's degree in agribusiness and can't find a job within an hour and 15, 20 minutes of Gilchrist County, and she's not the only one. There are countless others that experience the same thing. So if we can keep them here, everybody talks about our values, and the people are who make up those values. So whenever our young people have to leave in order to build a sustainable life and have success, we deport those values. So we're ultimately diluting the very thing that we hold so dear, and I think that is a very important thing for the commission to begin to look at, is what's for the next generation. It's not about us anymore.
And what other issues in the county are you concerned about?
Lack of proactiveness, in a lot of different areas. Just like with this transfer station deal. This thing has, it drug on too long. I don't agree that land to put a garbage facility on is worth $25,000 or $22,000 an acre. I don't. I don't know how you negotiate those things with landowners. I know how to negotiate, but you have to work transparently, and for us to already be in an extension period for the grant money that they're going to use, that tells me that, there was people were asleep at the wheel at some point. That's not a dig on anybody. That's just what it is. And now we're in a position where, you have to fish or cut bait, and because the grant is fixing to go away, and we need that. I think that it's, I don't know all the details of it, but I find it hard to believe that now all of a sudden we figured out that our garbage intake is through the roof. Where have we been the last 5 or 10 years? Was nobody paying attention, or, what's the deal? And there may be a really good explanation for that. I just haven't heard it. You know what I'm saying? So paying attention to the operation, not just, going to 2 meetings a month. It's about more than that, and having to have those conversations.
What makes you the best candidate in this race?
If a person wants to see, Gilchrist County, I was born and raised here, and, I don't like to put myself above anybody. I really don't. I think that I have a more proactive approach to sustaining a future for our county. Because if the property tax thing does pass, our future is in jeopardy, as far as our operational, means. And, no, the state can't come in and mandate, hey, you have to do this or you have to do that. But when you don't have the money to operate, people's roads deteriorate, their ability to have an ambulance show up in time, which is already, they get there in time, but it's however long to Gainesville, sheriff's deputies. When everybody's budgets start to get depleted because this money is generated out of the atmosphere, people, tend to trend to relief. That's just what people do. And I think that, I bring forward the ability, number one, to identify savings, to hold people accountable. Anybody that's, drawing a check of Gilchrist County taxpayer money from, commissioners, or I can't really say anything about a commissioner, but county administrator down, I'm going to hold them accountable. I'm going to talk to them multiple times a week, to know that business on behalf of the people of this county is being conducted in an appropriate manner, and moving it forward, mitigating urban sprawl. Look at the villages. I have a really close relationship with a person that sold a large tract of land to them in Sumter County. It was supposed to stay in Sumter County. Now it's in Sumter, Marion, and Lake. That can happen here if we're not careful and we're not proactive with our future land use maps and all of that stuff. So, I have an eye for the details, not just the big, blinking lights. I pay attention to details because it's the details that cost you in the end.
What can the citizens of Gilchrist County expect from you as a county commissioner?
What kind of what?
What can the citizens of Gilchrist County expect from you as a county commissioner?
Honesty, transparency, and hard work. I own my own business, and I've already, put things in place. If I'm elected, that 3 or 4 days a week, I'm going to be actively in county offices, having conversations with road superintendents, different people, just finding out what do we do to be better. How do we save Gilchrist County taxpayers money so that we can ensure to continue to operate? How can we make their atmosphere better? People perform better whenever they're in an atmosphere that they feel like supports them, So having an ear for not just the citizens, but the employees and so on and so forth, I'm gonna go to work. It's not about $37,500, whatever it is, in health insurance for me. I can afford my own health insurance, and I want to make sure that our county, our community, continues to hold the values and retain those values. All the while making it sustainable. That's important to me, and I'll get up every day to do that.
Is there anything we didn't cover that you feel like everyone needs to know?
No, I think in a nutshell, we covered it. You know, I love Gilchrist County and the people in it, and I have their best interest at heart. I'm not here for the, you know, like I said, the clickbait and the, you know, all the theatrics of it. I'm here for the people, and I want to represent the people, and I want to do so in a way that's honorable and pleasing to my Lord and Savior. Number one, because that's how I conduct myself every day. I've been blessed with the opportunity to teach ministry at the jail and watch that grow and to see the change that'll implement or has already implemented, you know, throughout this community, is one of the most humbling things ever. And servant leadership should humble a person, because it's not about us. And that's how I live my life every day.
Right. This was Daniel Fussell for County Commission District 2.